Good afternoon and welcome once again to panel discussion with data. I would first like to welcome our moderator for the session, Mr. Pranav Arora, Managing Director and Lead, Applied Intelligence, Accenture India. And now welcoming our panelists, we have with us Mr. Atin Chhabra, Vice President Marketing, Schneider Electric, Mr. Narayan Ramamoorthy, Chief Revenue Officer, Global PayEX, Mr. Sudeep Nayak, VP Engineering, PayU, Mr. Piyush Kumar, VP Head Data Platform Engineering, MakeMyTrip. Welcome all of you. Dear delegates, please keep asking questions in the chat box. The panel may pick a few and answer to you in the end of the session. Over to you, Mr. Arora.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, everyone, for making the time. So we've all heard about data being the new oil, right? And really is. It can fuel your engine of growth and propel your valuation sky. We have seen many such examples, be they of new age tech companies like Amazon and Netflix and Spotify, who use data to drive revenue, or even classical companies like McDonald's, who have used data to reinvent their operations and seen their PE ratio increase by more than 50% in last few years. We are entering an age of autonomy, and data becomes more important than ever to even deliver the experiences and economics of this age. Archimedes had said that if you give me a lever long enough, I will move the earth. Of course, he was talking metaphorically, but he was also illustrating the principle behind pulleys and levers which allow you to exert tremendous impact with little force. Data is one such lever. Your efforts in data can yield disproportionate returns, helping you drive X times valuation. I'm sure many of you today in this session have this opportunity in your business. And we hope that our perspectives and experiences can help you in some way, maybe inspire you, or at least show you a little bit of light on what to avoid. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll explore three questions with our eminent panelists. The first one is, why is data important, and what really happens when you deal strategically with data? What are the outcomes you can create? Second is, what does dealing strategically with data look like within an organization? What are some of the mental models that our panelists use to think about data? And the third one is, what are some of the key challenges that they've faced, and what would they do differently? Let's start with the first question. And Piyush, maybe let me put this up to you first, and since you run the data for an enterprise that manages literally millions of customers. So tell us a little bit about the context of data that you operate with, and why is data important for you, and what happens when you deal strategically with it?
Sure. Thanks, Pranav. I'm sure most of you and the attendees would have used the platform, right? MakeMyTrip or GoIBeepo or Redbus, right? So being part of a B2C setup, and in some contexts, we also have branched out with corporate travel as well, which is not directly so it's in between. You have the OTA playing a role of a business to business kind of a setting as well, but primarily so for both of the businesses, it's business to consumer, where so you are dealing with each and every interaction which you receive either through click events or through the server side generated events at the back. Primarily for both the brands, right? The data capture primarily looks like on a very high level. If you want to see, it's so any interaction which user is doing through the platforms, be it your mobile apps on Android, iOS, or PWA, or desktop applications on web. But more importantly, there is huge amount of microservices, huge amount of events which are generated through different microservices which are serving these customer experiences at the back, right? So on the data platform side of it, we stitch together all those events which are either coming in and flowing through these client or server side microservices, which are generating or providing those experiences as one. And specifically talking about so what Pranav asked, so how strategically thinking about data has changed some of the things on at least on the business side of it. So strategy goes primarily with the business itself, right? So what business value you want to create, what business strategy is. So data plays a direct role in terms of like how the business is positioned. So for MakeMyTrip is positioned like a super app of travel. So it's not just like flights or hotel booking or holidays, etc. We have like different products on ground transportation, which is like bus, rail, cab, metro, airport cab transfer, etc. So the super app or within travel domain is like fulfilling your trip requirements end to end, right? So on the product side of it, it is different funnels giving a different user experience and fulfilling a need of a user. But on the data side of it, like to fulfill the business requirement of a super app of travel, we are stitching together each and every event more like a graph, wherein the vertex is representing the destination of travel and the edges are representing the product or the search context which a user is looking forward to, right? So that's like strategically transforming those data sets, making it more event driven, and then figuring out, okay, what the user is doing on the app, figuring out, okay, what are the missing edges in that graph journey itself, to figure out, okay, these are the edges which are missing. It could be a potential cross-sell opportunity for us or something else, and then fulfilling those needs back to the customer experience in real time, right? So that's the crux, because when the user is there on your platform, you want to do the maximum. Otherwise, right, so when he has left the platform itself, it is very harder to ask user to come back through notifications, email, SMS, etc. So it's very important, for us to play with the data primarily on personalization recommendation front. That's number one. Whole customer intelligence and segmentation is done again through data, etc., which is again powering and aligned to business in terms of long-term proposition, if you want to see it through certain matrices like CLV, etc. But most importantly, in short term and long term, both goals, right? So data plays a huge role primarily on growth opportunity side of it, to map and do leverage certain things. Even in COVID times, we have seen data plays very key role in the safety campaigns, figuring out which hotels where to map these customers to, etc., and those kind of things. So Pranav, dealing strategically across with data primarily, as I said, it goes hand in hand with the business value you want to generate through that the data assets you have within the organization, either capturing it directly or acquiring certain indirect data sources from other sources as well. Yeah. Over to you, Pranav.
No, thanks a lot. Anyone else who wants to kind of add their own perspective on why is data important, and what happens when you deal strategically with data?
Sure. Should I go? This is Naru here.
Yeah.
You want to go, Sudeep?
Go ahead, Naru.
Okay, cool. So yeah, hi. We Global PayEX is essentially accounts receivable payable automation platform, and the space we play is working capital optimization. Now, we typically deal with CFOs, treasury heads, AR heads, AP heads, credit heads in order to optimize working capital cycles. And the core to being able to optimize working capital cycles are the KPIs, key metrics, and the data associated with those key metrics. Some examples of these metrics are DSOs, which is days sales outstanding, right, on the receivable side, DPO, days payment outstanding on the payable side. Cash discounts, when you're paying out, have you actually leveraged the cash discounts that your vendors have kind of provided you? On the AR side, is there a lot of write-offs, right, because of disputes and deductions? So those are examples of levers now, or examples of KPIs. So you need to track the KPIs at an aggregate level. Two is at a segment level, right? Which types of customers are causing what? For example, in the DSO, meaning the institutional customers are larger DSO, dealer distributor segment is smaller DSO, smaller segment is somewhere in between the two, etc. So that's the first level of data analytics that you need to do. The second is, which is more important, is why is the DSO high? For example, if that's the metric you want to kind of tackle, you need to go into the next level, right? Of okay, think about a fishbone or common sense or any analytic levers, right? Because DSO could be bad because invoices were not seen on time. DSOs could be bad because sufficient pay modes were not available to your payers. They didn't know where to kind of pay to. DSOs could be bad because you didn't have like a early payment discount or nudges to your customer. DSO could be bad because you didn't chase customers fast enough in terms of collection chases, right? So you need to then break down those key KPIs into smaller KPIs, right? So strategy coming down a little bit to tactics, but even there you need data to actually see which of these levers is causing that large deep DSO in order for you to be able to kind of tackle that. So that's our perspective in terms of how companies kind of look at data, at least on the working capital side.
Okay, I mean, what I'm fundamentally hearing is that your business model is based on exploiting data itself, right? So it's a data-driven company in its very essence. Sudeep, sorry, you also wanted to make a point.
Yeah. In the promising AI-powered economy, data is considered one of the most important strategic resources for companies. And any application of AI and ML will only be as good as the quality of data collected. At Pay especially, just to quote a few examples of outcomes that were possible, everything in payments is based around decision making. When a transaction comes in, it's about choosing between multiple options available with respect to gateways and banks, and you want to optimize the success rates and margins too. The decision is repeated few million times a day, and usage of data is at the core capability that allows PayU to offer intelligent routing algorithms among multiple payment methods available for any merchant, and that chooses the most optimized route to perform a given transaction and keeps improving through historical as well as real-time data. And even if you look at fraud, most fraudsters have a pattern. It's mostly about a pattern recognition problem. Again, relying on data and the feedback loop normally involving humans initially gradually reduces the human intervention, and computers take over, and it minimizes the impact and reduces the financial risk exposure. And then there's risk assessment while onboarding merchants to pre-approve merchant settlement amounts to a certain threshold, or improvement in payment authentication mechanisms based on risk prediction models based on historical data of that user, to sometimes even have one-click checkouts when without even asking for an OTP for non-risky consumers to have seamless payment experiences. So we use data, ML, AI to power even features like PayU Assist, where we have achieved 70% reduction in weekly merchant queries and 95% reduction in retail buyer queries, and it's essentially the how good the data quality is that determines how successful you are in the overall outcome of any AI/ML model that's implemented over that.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Sudeep. So I think the sentiment that is common is that data powers the very business. I mean, I think the day-to-day operations to the strategic data making, the strategic decision making, not possible without data. Yeah. Maybe let's move to the second question, and Yatin, let me pose this to you. So, what does dealing strategically with data look like? How do I know if I am, dealing strategically with data, or if I am not making the best use of it? And what's the mental model that you employ to think about data, especially in the context of Schneider? Unlike the others, they're talking about yours is a more B2B business. There's a big, production, IoT, all of those complications also in the business. So let's get your perspective.
No, thanks so much, Pranav, and great points by fellow panelists. I think this stems good to so-called of how do you look at data strategically. Okay, strategically looking at data, and it's very funny because when I was invited for this panel and looked at the topic, and I'm thinking data strategically, meaning what all can you talk? But it's a very it's something which is not looked at. Okay, right now we look at strategically marketing, business operations, etc., everything. I think strategically looking at data where it's part of the CEO's agenda is something which we are only seeing the last 5 years. Okay, so at a very basic level, okay, meaning very, very high level. Okay, what is the CEO looking at, or what is the head of a company looking at? Can I increase my sales? Can I look at optimization, my shareholder value? Okay, etc., everything. Okay, how do you start looking at data to solve those problems and not looking at the operations? Okay, I think the three things which become very important why we need to look at strategically data, and I think that's where the rise of the chief data officers in the last few years, and you'll see that number go up. What is very unfortunate on the other part by Gartner, that the average time spent by a chief data officer is only 2.5 years, okay, which means that this is still an evolving so-called industry, is that can we use data to drive operational efficiency, right? Not only from a point of view of processes and tools, but also people, right? Which is one of the biggest costs. Can we use data to make better decisions, right? At a company level, right? Where you're not looking at your experience, my experience, tu meme, okay? And make data which is more decision making, okay? It might be much more easier in younger companies, right? But in large complex organization, it becomes a huge thing. And the last is, how do you start using data from a customer engagement point of view, especially in this COVID scenario? Okay, and where I might differ a little bit from Piyush is that it's not about data at the real time. I think it's the right time. Okay, the real time has become very easy. Okay, but when is the right time? When is the right way where I give Piyush something where he doesn't get angry? Okay, while it's real time, but maybe not the right time. I think that is something which is becoming very, very important to look at data at a strategic level rather than a day-to-day level. To your question on mental models, I think one of the mental models which we follow, at least in Schneider and also at B2B companies, is look at data at two perspectives. Okay, one is your defensive and one is your offensive. Okay, what is your defensive? Okay, there are a lot of factors there, but three big factors I like to look at. Is our data compliant? Remember, we are getting into in a world where GDPR, California law, China data, India data, it's not the same game anymore. Okay, there has to be significant investments, at least at a global level, to look at data and say whether we are compliant. Second is security, right? You're right, okay, in company like Schneider, where we are now driving IoT products, right? All of our circuit breakers are connected to the internet, where we're picking up data of our clients, we're using that data to do predictive, prescriptive analytics, etc. How secure is that, right? Meaning data hacks is becoming a norm. Okay, we face that at a more regular basis than it was there 5 years back. Okay, and that's becoming a big risk. And the third is access. Okay, hand to heart, how many of you guys here or even the audience have access to company data which you're not supposed to have, right? That becomes a huge problem from a leakage point of view. So I think that's an offensive part of looking at data. Defensive part of looking at data strategically. Okay. At the offensive part, I think, how do you start looking at one source of data, one truth? Okay, the whole data lake concept. Okay, one of the biggest problems is you're getting data from here, you're getting data from there. Okay, which data is right? You spend hours and hours debating the sanctity of data. Okay, how do organizations make that single data lake where we can start looking? Okay, that's, I think, one offensive way of looking at it. How do we move from descriptive to prescriptive, right? Most of the companies and most of the people, okay, and I speak under all of my panelists' control, are looking at data at a descriptive point of view, okay, are looking at past data to make future decisions, okay. Can we make it more automated? Can we make it more predictive, not even, maybe even prescriptive? I think that's extremely important. And like you said, if data is the oil, how do we start monetizing that? I think that itself is in a business model which most of the companies are not looking at, right? You're looking at business model in which digital becomes a very important aspect, right, for traditional companies. But how do you look at business models where data becomes a very important aspect, and I can start selling my oil to get revenue where I don't need salespeople? So at a very large level, okay, this is the kind of mental model we should look at data, not only more at an operational level point of view, but how does it critically solve business problems?
Thanks a lot, Atin. Thanks. That was some very, very good points. Piyush, Sudeep, do you want to add your perspective on? I mean, because one of the things that I want to explore a little bit more about is, how do I know if I am dealing strategically with data? If I'm sitting in the audience, what is it that will tell me that am I dealing strategically with data or not? I think Atin gave us a a couple of pointers around that. Is your data in one place? Do you have the right quantity, quality, and latency of data? Do you have a culture which is data driven? Do you have data actually being used at every point of the value chain where is it possible? But just to get your perspectives also. Sudeep or Piyush, any one of you if you want to come in?
Sure. No, very well put up, Atin, right? So both like so defensive and offensive way of looking at things, both from, so he touched upon many things, right? So one, the governance part of it, right? Which is like, so looking at like, so is my data compliant, secured, all the privacy guidelines and many other things, plus access to data, who is allowed, who is not, and other piece. So that's like data governance. That's one part of it. And then he touched upon very rightly, and like so that's a like term which we have been hearing for many decades now, which is like 360-degree profile view, one central place, now data lake, and now there is a new term which is coined by like so many organizations like Databricks and AWS, etc., which they call it lake house, which is like data lake is no more a junkyard now. Like, so you need to put data in like correct data models with good data quality, which Sudeep also talked about. Because like so all your machine learning models which you put up are as good as the data flowing into it, or which is powering it. What you are trying to learn or predict goes with the good data quality itself. So Pranav, like, so you mentioned, right, what mental model, how you think from that perspective. So probably I want to touch upon broadly that part itself. And like, because I'm more of like, so the practitioner from the data platform side of it. So I will talk more from that perspective itself and try to give you a different angle on strategy and like alignment with business itself. But like, so broadly, any data platform which would be either doing capture, storage of data, processing of data, and then serving or querying the data and including visualization itself, has certain key integrants like so which are part of like so when you are thinking, right? So Deep also mentioned like so it starts from the data capture, good quality capture from the sources itself, right? So when you are trying to be it in any IoT setup, or in our case, right? So we also try to think, right? So the setups can be like, so it could be IoT devices or it could be mobile devices generating those events, right? So you can put up like, so events flowing in from one source to others, streaming sources where you are trying to capture these event streams. And the key crux, and rightly put up, Atin, right? So it's not just the real-time processing part of it. You need to truly understand while doing like so the right time, right place, and each and everything, especially in travel context. If you are talking about like, so you need to truly understand the context before giving any experience back to the customer. And that's how the feedback loops and understanding of the whole data comes into the play. But again, coming back to the mental model, which need to be in place primarily is like so one, having good quality data assets, right? So like so people try to just put the data in data lake and then forget about it, right? So the good data models and the metadata associated with it, the catalog part of it, or you want to the master data management MDM part of it, etc., is equally very important. Like so when you are devising your mental models, right? So on MakeMyTrip, right, we invested on in 2019, like so we worked on creating feature stores. Feature store essentially is like one central like place where you figure out all your data assets, right? So you can call like, so earlier people used to call it data catalogs. Now these are feature catalogs, right? So it's not just like, so the data sources or data assets which you are putting up into your data lakes, right? So you have like, so various aggregates, matrices, etc. You need to know each and every lineage part of it from your feature catalogs system itself. So essentially feature stores are wherein like, so you are putting up all your config driven, like what is my data source, what is my computation logic, and how my sink looks like. So source, computation, sink is how like everything is like, so those configurations are again put up into your catalog, linked across those kind of things. I have seen like, so in some organization, and we also evolved like how we were started, like, so by building various pipeline and pipeline jungles, right? So wherein like, so you are just like focusing more on like bringing from one source to other, right? That's it. But like, so now the game is like not the ETL part of it, etc. You need to truly understand how the data flow is, what business value it is generating end to end, right? So which is like, so if a customer is getting impacted through a experience, and then that feedback loop is also generated, right? So Sudeep mentioned, right? So there are many decisions across all our organizations on the panel, right? Which are on a regular basis we are taking, but are we recording both the things, right? How that decision was taken, which model, which version of those models, etc. And those things becomes very critical in a long run, primarily like to achieve the true business value which you want to put up across. Sudeep, you want to add to
I
this?
think Piyush, you and Atin covered most of the points. Just one thing related to relevance of data. A truly defensible data strategy cannot be the result of just gathering the largest volume of data. It's critical to identify which data is valuable for you and why, and that becomes a challenge sometimes. And the best data sets are tied to a particular problem domain, and deep data sets focused on solving specific problems are better than large broad data sets. And again, data has a shelf life. So in my own personality and priority can change. So anyone harnessing it is doing disservice to themselves if they are not looking at the most relevant data for that particular use case.
Hey, Sudeep, just an aside, and I completely agree the shelf life part, but sometimes the shelf life is in hundreds of years. So for example, in banking, it's not uncommon to be able to go back 50 years to understand the group company linkage, especially for corporate loans. But just to kind of share my perspective on this whole mental model piece, the way I like to think about it is that there are five parts to it, and it's a four-part jigsaw puzzle sitting on a bedrock of culture and capability. And to me, the four parts of the jigsaw puzzle is the platform, or the platform which has to have all the capabilities around data management, security, the right kind of capabilities for you to drive high quality data. The second component is your data supply chain. I think just like we have done so much work in optimizing the physical supply chains, there's huge potential in optimizing the data supply chains. The third component to me are the use cases, which I like to think of in terms of control towers and engines. So the control towers, which create that visibility, command, and collaboration for the executives driving it, and the engines, which are embedded with all the predictive, prescriptive, and all the intelligent automation components also. The fourth part to me is the deployment, and I think the deployment specifically in terms of the business initiative and in the downstream applications. There's so much work that happens in data science that doesn't see the light of the day, does not get deployed, and it might get deployed technically, but it is not getting deployed as part of a business initiative. So I think those are the four key components to me, and they need to sit on a completely different culture and capability that needs to come in. To me, that's the mental model. At least I like to think of. Maybe let me go to the third question, and Sudeep, maybe let me ask you this because uh, you work for a fintech startup. The budgets are constrained, excepting obviously when you raise $1 billion, but otherwise there are lots of challenges. So how do what are the kind of challenges you face, and how do you get the C-suite and other people to kind of make the investment? Because Piyush also talked a lot about making the investment, and those are how do you get people to do that? And even if there's willingness to make the investment, what are the other kind of challenges you face?
Sure. So I mean, for us, it's not even an option not to be a data first AI company. The scale at which we are operating, can't give the exact number, but let's say millions of transactions a day, and a system has to scale 50x during peak hours. I mean, you can always get the tools and process, but can the mindset be changed? Um, uh, as the adoption progresses, first we start with how do we implement it throughout the organization, and the answer is through transformation, and that's quite a journey involving all the functions trying to look at data cleansing, data preparation, etc., and then unifying access to data and knowing what's in the data. It's always a challenge because data science or data analytics or data people are not the closest to business and are not business people. So great partnership between business with data analytics, data science teams becomes very critical to deliver value. Changing the way people take decisions, trusting models, where the data comes from, what are the manners in which models have been created, and that's going to be key to adoption of some of these aspects. And then it comes to scale. With skill, another problem appears, and that is governance. That is, one or two data sets, models are easy to control, but tens of thousands of them, unless you have a systematic way of monitoring and looking at all of the models and outcome, it can go out of control. So some of these aspects become a challenge, and if you look at traditional banking and financial systems, where they want to get into data, AI, ML, but then there are regulations, there are regulatory requirements that make it hard to get onboarded. And then there are younger fintechs which can be AI data first companies. And while banks want to try to use data or AI, there may already be so many processes in place which can be a first hindrance to complete adoption. And more hierarchical the system, less are the chances of disruption that can be brought in naturally. So it requires a collaborative effort. In terms of challenges, I think compliance and security, that is, priorities not only to collect data, but also and to lay down to good use, but also to secure it in the manner in which data should be protected up to the level, and which type of data needs to be adequately protected. And given the pace at which a lot of data is available and becoming, it will soon become a commodity soon. If you think about it, look at search engines which were invented in 1990s. They competed on how many documents they could find in 1990s. Funny to think about it now, but in 2000 the problem became opposite. That is, now that we have millions of data points, how do we choose the top 10? And that's exactly what is happening in data. So while we feel we need more of it, it's also about what data we really need, which is credible, supported, inherent in the process, with governance, and helps us in deriving the right results. And there's a significant effort investment as well involved in any data strategy that is which is the right experimental model, which means a lot of experiments go in, and you may have to throw away a lot of work. That's something which I see as some of the challenges. On ethics, again, with data and AI, ML models playing a large role in loan applications, investments, many other financial services. Ethics of AI, ML data are an especially important topic for fintech sector, slowly becoming an important topic. We are making real decisions about whether we are providing credit to one person or not, and getting the right outcome is important, and based on models which may sometimes be a black box, not fully understood. So we can't expect model outcomes to not have bias when the data is created by us is biased. And we have a complex society, and there is also gut feeling in some of the decisions. So how we need to explore the challenges of building better ethics into AI or into machine learning, and then derive that from the data. That is when quickly deciding an objective outcome under different scenarios, how can we quantify and measure what is an ethical decision to make, is going to become more and more critical.
No, I think lots of very good points, and I love the point around the whole ethic piece thing. Even as Accenture, we're investing a lot in what we call responsible AI, which is how to basically manage exactly the kind of issues that you're talking about. Yatin, Naru, we have a few questions before we may go there. Any last perspectives from you, Atin or Naru, and then maybe I can take I will put some of the questions that we have to all of you.
Sure. Just one quick thing is, I think it was alluded to, saying the challenge is, yes, so a lot of data science doesn't see light of day. Platforms could be great. Data is there, right? Uh, Analytics is kind of done. So the way to possibly address that challenge is to do some rapid experiments, right? So you need to have a cultural alignment, A. B, a technology capability. In order to kind of run those experiments quickly, almost think of it as like an A/B kind of testing. And based on the result, that is also data, right? Compare your control set with this test set and kind of keep iterating that continuously and fast, because today's speed to market, things are changing so fast that you really need an ability and an adaptability both in the company culture and your tech stack to be able to do that. Just one addition to what was kind of said.
Yeah. And just one more point, one of the things which you said was that how do we garner those investments? And meaning, I'm sure everybody will agree that we, especially when it comes to data, you need those investments. Okay, it's very hard to say that I'll show you a success story and then get those investments. It's possible, but you will never get that kind of scale. Let's go back to understand this whole concept of digital transformation, right? In the 5-6 years, you see companies going through it, 2 trillion USD in digital transformation across, okay? How did it become such a big phenomenon, right? It is when it came on the CEO's table. And the fact that digital transformation is not data transformation. Okay, what Sudeep was talking about, what Naru, everybody's talking about is that you need to answer the right questions. There is a lot of data. Okay, that's the sad part, and that's also an opportunity. Okay, both parts is that the kind of data we're collecting, I mean, it's just a lot. Okay, the shelf life of data, and still you want to go to past data and say what happened then. How do you do that data? I'm actually going and telling people, forget looking at past data. Data itself is evolving. The way we start computing data is evolving. So after a while, you cannot do past comparisons because the data will not match. I think data transformation has to be in the CEO's agenda, where you can see, or she can see, how data is helping in efficiency. Okay, can data and AI almost reduce my call center staff by 50%? Okay, push the self-service model. Okay, now I know that's controversial to say from a people point of view, but can we drive those kind of efficiencies? Once we start showing that, right, I think the shift from digital transformation to data transformation is something which we will have to do in the next 2 or 3 years, right? It becomes very, very important.
I agree, Atin, and I think very well put, but I would only disagree with one part that, I think all of you are probably fortunate to be in a place where you're saying the investments have not been a challenge. My experience has been that more often than not, people are stuck in this POC purgatory, I would say, right? There is this continuous thing that
Sorry, correction. I don't think anybody of us said investment is a challenge. I think everybody will agree investment is a challenge. Okay, if anybody says it's not, I would like to have a one-on-one talk with any one of the panelists.
Okay. On that note, let me take one of the questions, which was exactly around the point that you were making, which is the question is, which aspects from personal experiences will you say are the most important for strategically building data? And I agree with Atin's point that, to me, the number one and most important thing is, is the CEO aligned? Does he have the vision for building a data-driven organization and AI-powered organization? At least that's my experience. Happy to kind of open it up to all of the others. The question I will say again is, which aspects from personal experiences will you say are the most important for strategically building data? Any thoughts, comments, or?
Yeah. So in addition to what you said, Pranav, is the clear alignment of what are you trying to solve for. I think all panelists kind of echoed that, right, through the last 30 or 40 odd minutes. but being absolutely clear, saying which metric, which KPI are you going behind, right? You can't go behind all KPIs together. Nothing is going to work, right? And you can't build the data supply chain at the back of that. So
I think that might be a little micro, in terms of thinking about. I mean, see, if you think about an AI-powered organization, right, you have no choice but to be front to back powered every part of the value chain with data. I think that was the point that Sudeep was making around that, you have to be a data first company. So any other perspectives on, what would the most important, let's say if you have to pick one, what's your most important factor for dealing strategically with data?
I think from my point of view is that if you can start using data to automate processes, because which is another big thing which is happening, how do we start automate it? That itself is a very, very strong usage of this oil, of this new oil, right? How do we start making both decisions, which is then automated and which can then help efficiency? Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's
obviously,
very, very
we're heading into an age of autonomy as
executives, the amount of time we spend on decision making based on experiences and based on stakeholder alignment, based on this, meaning I know it's important. It's how we all make our money, but let's say that how do we make it more simpler? How do we make it okay? We have the data, we make a decision. Look at the time which we can save. Okay, I think that itself, at a very, very high level, okay, can help change a lot of things.
Great. Maybe let me take another question. So the other question that we had was, nowadays we are dealing with huge loads of data, some of which may not be relevant. What strategies do you use to deal with data optimization or determine the quality that you feed into the AI ML model? Sudeep or Piyush, maybe you want to kind of take this one.
Sure. Data quality, we have already emphasized during our conversation itself. But if we want to talk about how part of it, how to make sure good quality data assets are generated, and so as I said, and Sudeep in his initial comments also said, during capture itself, right? So when you are capturing the data, you need to put those quality checks in place, and there are tools, technologies which already exist in the market at scale, just to capture those quality matrices which tell you how good or bad that data is, right? So for example, in MakeMyTrip, we use both DQ and Great Expectations as a framework to measure the data quality with various checks, etc. Right? That's one part of it. The other key part is here we are talking about at scale, right? So, and Atin also mentioned automation is the key, and just to add at automation at a really large scale, right? We are not talking about some smaller data set or making an impact, where Atin alluded the whole decision making process which is done by all the XO level guys, can that be removed and been done in a manner where, right, we are feeding it more through the automation route, through data models, machine learning, predictive, or otherwise, right? So the scale is going to be very critical while defining those quality matrices, either while inputting those values to the model, and then both, I would again repeat, right? So it's not just real time is going to be harder. It's not dead simple for plain vanilla, because the interaction has just happened, right? And you want to just do the right thing for that decision making right there. For example, in PayU case, choosing that a payment gateway is not just one metric, right? There are many things which you want to move ahead along with it at scale. So probably that you need to keep in mind as well.
So did you want to add?
Just one other thing, that is, important to have a framework on quality checks at every stage of the data pipeline, and automation is key. and to have a systematic way to monitor all the data sets and models. That's going to be critical in handling scale.
Yeah. Well, again, and I think the way I think about it, and maybe a little controversial, is that when you're bringing in the raw data, just bring in everything. You have to organize your layers within your data platform. From the raw, as you get to your enhanced data stores, etc., that is when you start putting in your, clear supply chain and clear pipelines. And I think unless we do that, there's just so much back and forth that I've seen that happens in, hey, am I collecting the right thing from the source? Have I got that? And there's so much time that gets spent over there. But if we at least sort that first part out, bring the raw data as is to you, and then from there build on. It is much more in the control of the data platform team to be able to then produce the outputs. Let me pick up one last question. I think we just have 5 minutes. This question is around, while dealing strategically with huge amounts of data, how to deal with the challenge of data security. Sudeep, maybe you want to kind of kick us off on it. And again, I will lean on, I think, the two more practitioner related people, Sudeep and Piyush, to help us navigate this question.
Sure. So data security again, is a broader thing. But again, both security and privacy go hand in hand, right? So any PI information which you are or SPI information which you are putting up or capturing from your sources, etc., it has to be in a manner where it is more anonymized at that layer itself. It can't be an afterthought. I would disagree, right? So because if you are putting up collecting everything in raw format and then cleaning and doing those kind of things, there is a huge drop there itself, and hence probably the focus at least on our side is do the right thing while capturing it itself, right? So because that ways you have anonymized the data. Otherwise you are creating a PI information at one source and then doing your anonymization, etc. at the back. But on the other side of it, right? So because I'm sure everybody is working more on cloud native services, etc. And these cloud vendors or the different services do provide all the checks balances to make sure so your data is secured, etc. But the key thing which I have learned and experienced is configuration, and those configurations lead to more issues and bad configuration, I mean, right? So not rightfully configuring those policies, checks, etc. in place, and people have not automated those kind of things, right? So some IT admin is configuring based on certain requests, etc. is absolutely pathetic, right? So he may go haywire and do any misconfiguration which will lead you to more losses, etc. So one, probably in the framework side of it, make sure so whatever you are capturing, you are not leaving anything in your capture side of it or storage side of it, which is so in plain text ever, right? So that's number one. The other key part is make sure so all your configurations which are there in place to protect and apply those security policies or other guidelines are implemented through automation itself, have good the other key part which which has worked for us is do more of drill downs with without a hacker, right? So which is making sure if things go wrong, right, how to have those kind of things, plus have a backup strategy, right, in place.
Yeah.
So you can't be 100% secure ever, right? So it is again chicken egg or kind of a problem. So having proper backup strategy that is also very secured with those kind of things do help in long run.
Yeah. So thanks a lot, Piyush. I think we are at the top of the hour. Thanks a lot, everyone, for sharing your perspective, and thanks a lot, everyone, for hearing us out. Any last comments or thoughts, or maybe the moderator from IMA wants to Yeah, all yours.
Thank you, speakers, for an amazing discussion. A special thank you to our title partner, Accenture, track partner, Automation Anywhere, cloud communication partner, Rootmail, bronze partner, Tata Teleservices, and knowledge partner, PwC. Stay tuned for more such exciting conversations. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks, Pranav.
Thank you.
Thanks, Atin.
Bye.
Thanks, Naru. Thanks, Sudeep.
All right.
Bye-bye.
You guys.
Take care.